Once upon a time, there was a snail princess. When she was 21, she had no job, and the queen mother one day told her that she signed up snail princess for a job application without telling her up front, so she went behind the back. That is for another story, but it's important to mention how it came about. So, it wasn't an application, just a regular job application per se. No, nothing like that. It had to be fancy. In a sense, it was a competition for a position of an air traffic controller for the local international airport. Yeah, okay, fine, fair enough. Like, no way, right? Might as well try it. So the princess didn't blow the gasket exactly at the queen mother for pulling that stunt behind her back, filling the application, whatever. Like, yeah, no way, like, she's gonna go for it, fine. So on the day, there was like about 100 plus contestants, right? A big crowd. And the test started, and it was like in rounds. So there was like one round, there was of like IQ test or something, and then there was like spatial awareness, spatial manipulation, like in basically like 3D sort of virtual thing that you had to do in your head to solve the puzzles, and some other ones, just basically a round after round. And after each round, the people who were testing, they would disappear, get the scores, they would come back out, and they would like read out the names of people who failed, so who didn't make the cut. So after each round, Snail Princess was sitting and waiting for her name to be called out, but it never happened. And then the tests were over, no more, and she made it. So after 100 plus people, it was her and 4 other people left. And she was like, no way, right? That can't be right. But what the hell just happened? Anyway, she decided, like, fuck it, I want to get away from mother, like, anyway, so might as well try it. So she had to go for a 6-month course to the capital, where the main international airport was, and the training center and whatnot. And she lived there during the week in this kind of dorm with, hello, how are you? With those 2 other girls from a different city, and they knew each other. So it was awkward. It was Snail Princess against just basically the world. So she didn't make friends. Normal, typical for Snail Princess. And she just, kept her head down. She studied like meteorology, the rules of air traffic control, how the planes are built, all that crap to make sure that like what this air traffic is about. Which was, a lot of it was very interesting, but majority of it was so difficult to learn, because Snail Princess doesn't really do well with memorizing things without understanding. And unfortunately, she didn't understand a lot of what's been taught. And she had no time to process or understand those things. So she was just cramming it in. And that was stressful, because she figured, like, okay, since she's doing that, she might use it as a means to get away from the mother and be independent. So she put all her eggs in that one basket, like, to fucking make it. To fucking make it. So she did her best. And obviously she paid the price, because every single night she couldn't fall asleep because she was anxious, like, psychosomatic sort of a thing. Anxiety has to manifest somewhere, somehow. So it was wrecking her legs, like tremors in the muscles and stuff like that, shaking. And then it transformed into problems with breathing. So yeah, but she made it. She enjoyed, the only part that she really enjoyed was the fact that with her clearance pass, she could go anywhere at the airport. So it was kind of cool, like, oh, I can use this bus that goes across the runway. Ooh, I can go here where no one else can, where stewardesses go, or the pilots, or the ground crew. That was cool. And yeah, so that was really fucking amazing. But also was difficult for another thing, because she learned how easily things can go wrong. And so she got really, really scared of flying. And one time later on, when she had to fly, she was absolutely shitting herself, because she could imagine all the things that could go wrong. And it's never one thing. It's always a chain of small little events, of small little errors. And then things go tip-top and the plane crashes. But okay, no idea how she fucking passed. Great. So she went back to her hometown, to her international airport, to start training on the job. Oh yeah, the money was great. So she was very happy, but because of the scarcity mindset that was plugged in by Queen Mother, she was scrounging every penny. But that's beside the point. The point was, she got back there and it was the beginning of a nightmare, because the boss of the whole place, that obviously was related to air traffic control, was really mean. And if that wasn't enough, he had a wife who was a senior air traffic controller. It was very difficult to avoid them. And whenever they were around, it was just, Princess just wanted to make herself as small, as invisible as possible, just not to be bullied, not to hear, like, snide comments or remarks, or, I don't know, sarcastic questions, or being screamed at, literally screamed at. And Princess has a problem with that, people shouting and screaming. So whenever the boss pulled up, or his wife was on a shift, it was a nightmare. So yeah, I mean, the job was okay. In a sense, it was a 12-hour shift, not every day. It was a random calendar sort of schedule. In a sense, at the beginning of the month, we would get like a roster for the whole month with the shifts. And some shifts would be like the day ones, some shifts would be night ones. The shift would be 12 hours, 2 hours on, 2 hours off. So yeah. And funny thing is that during those 2 hours off, because Princess had no idea she was autistic, and that being focused, like sharp razor focused, and concentrate for 2 hours was taking so much out of her, she just would go for a nap while other people were doing other things. she would just be fucking snoozing. And that didn't escape the attention of the power couple. So they started to try to look for ways to get rid of Princess. They sent her for a psychological checkup. I mean, not immediately. It took a few years, right? To send her for a checkup because maybe she had the eating disorder. They were suspecting bulimia. Hey, because she was fat. Well, when was Princess not fat? Never. So they suspected she had bulimia. Truth was, she was actually more so into anorexia at the time. But the thing was, it was autism that was just basically sensory overload and mental overuse that caused her to sleep so much. But for fuck's sake, mind your own business. What I do in those 2 hours of rest, mind you, is my business. But anyway, so they tried that. The psychologist didn't find anything wrong with Princess. Funny, huh? They didn't, and they sent me back. Well, the whole plan, the idea of the whole air traffic control was how the system worked was that if you make the cut to become an assistant, then they expect you within 1 or 2 years to train to become a proper air traffic controller, which is fair enough. And Princess was not bad at this, air traffic controller assistant thing. She did her job well, but she knew deep down that she wasn't cut out for the actual air traffic control thing. Basically, one of the requirements was not using radar or any support, just the voice communication and the airspeed, the speed, and the flight levels, whatever, to calculate where the aircraft was actually in the sky in reference to the other aircraft, to make sure they didn't bump into each other. Makes sense, right? That's what keeps you alive when you're flying in a machine that shouldn't be flying. So the math of it was just way too difficult. In a sense, she wasn't able to calculate it just on the fly, pun intended. So she knew that there was no point putting her up there to make those split-second decisions, because sooner or later she would end up in jail, either by causing an incident, or worse, a proper crash or some sort of tragedy, or basically people would die and she would end up behind the bars, feeling very, very guilty about it. So she didn't want to do that. She was fine to stay as an air traffic controller assistant for the rest of her life if she had to. But no. And then she fell off the horse. She broke her back. Nothing serious. Well, not that serious. Could have been worse. So she was out of action. And that wasn't the problem, but she had time to actually analyze things. And she started thinking, I think this job is actually very stressful, which she had no idea about that. So she wanted a change of scenery because she was unhappy. So she decided to leave. And when she went for that talk with the boss, and he goes like, "Miss Honey, so what do you plan of doing after you leave?" And she said, "I'd like to work with horses or some other animals." And he laughed at her. And that was this kind of nasty laugh, in a sense, this is such a good job. You had position here, blah, blah, opportunities. and you throw it back into our faces to go and mock out the horses. And I was thinking, yeah, fuck, yeah, because I want to have life. I want to enjoy instead of wrecking myself. So she quit. But that wasn't it. It would have been grand if it was just like easy like that, you know, you walk out the door, story's over. No. I think it took 10 plus years to stop having nightmares, like quite frequent nightmares, of the boss and or his wife screaming at Princess in her dreams, planes colliding, falling off from the sky, burning, people screaming. Like, for fuck's sake. She had no idea, but it was a classic PTSD. Just from working for 7 years in air traffic control in an environment that is not suitable for autistic people. Because back then, nobody had a fucking idea about autism. Well, at least not in females. I don't know if Raymond was out by then, I think. Maybe. Love the film. Funny thing, never identified. Not really, but anyway, I'm digressing. So, the whole point of the story is that being autistic means that we have those special talents. Like in my case, things that got me the job was the incredible focus, attention to details, a spatial 3D virtual manipulation thing. Yeah, like being on time, like the being exact on time. Like if someone said like, oh, I'll be back in 30 seconds, that's exactly what it meant. So it was cool about that environment that if someone said like, oh, I'll be this and this long, that's exactly what they meant. It wasn't like ordinary people say like, oh, I'll be back in a minute, and it's been 10 minutes. No, it meant 1 minute. So that was a good thing about it. Yeah, but getting back to autistic people have those special things. I mean, not special, some quality talents, whatever you want to call it, that stand out, that are just above the norm. But on the other hand, there are also things they struggle with way, way more than neurotypical people. And we are capable of doing such great things, achieving things, doing things. But if the environment is not right, we just burn out. So think about it. All the investment, the money they had to spend to train me, and just went tits up because of how they treated people. And I think it's true for any actual working environment that if you don't look after your employees, then you're wasting money for all the training and stuff. I mean, I suppose corporations, like and big ones, they just don't give a fuck. So I'm not going to change the world, that's fine. But I'm just saying to be aware of the fact that autism doesn't mean you can't do things. You can do a lot. But it's just oftentimes can be detrimental if it's not friendly or designed for us. So I'm not saying, I mean, I don't know what I want to say. I'm not saying don't do this or whatever. But I know it's hard. If we want to be independent, we have to work, which means we have to squeeze ourselves into whatever's available. And not everyone is cut out to be an entrepreneur and go solo and start a business. But don't lose faith, because we all have something to offer and we all have something to give. Whatever it may be, however small it may be, we have at least one thing we're fucking amazing at. So, love you all, guys. All right? Take care and look after your mental health. Peace.